Hello, it's Lord Slaw here, coming to you with another video, and today is a best to worst. I know I haven't done one of these in a while. In fact, I've only done one, being the best to worst bad Cyberman stories, but that seemed to get quite a lot of views, so I thought, I'll do another one since I've watched a lot of multi-doctor stories lately, and, I've done endless top fives, let's do something to break, mix it up a little bit, and if you've got any suggestions of what you might want me to do for a best to worst, go ahead, leave them in the comments. I might just do them if I like the idea. But anyway, let's get into some multi-doctor stories. So some preliminary thoughts about them. None of them particularly amazing. I mean, there's some of them are good stories, but never outstanding. And some of them are just blatant vehicles to have the doctors get together with, no real substance or story. But oh well, let's get into it. So just before we start, I'd like to say that this is, only the televised stories, which aren't like short or anything. It's full stories, even whether it be specials or in a season. No dimensions in time, no time crash, nothing like that. Just the standard stuff which you'd expect. Now, let's actually get into it. So at the worst spot, we have the Day of the Doctor. I know I'm gonna get like some flaming torches, poke me in the arse, spread my guts all over the town, especially when I say it's by far the most overrated story. I mean, fair enough if it's one of your favourites, but I just don't get how it's number one, how it's better than all these stories. I don't see, like, anywhere. I mean, like, say, for example, Caves of Androzani. It's not my favourite story ever. That's Inferno. I mean, I still absolutely love it, and I'm happy to admit Caves of Androzani is definitely one of the best episodes. Same with Blink. And I really like Blink still. It's in like my top 30. I wouldn't personally put it in my top 10, but I can see why. I can see its merits. I don't see that in Day of the Doctor. I don't see like how it's really good. And in fact, I see quite a few kind of flaws really. One of the big ones being the fact that it kind of shits all over the Time War arc, which has been built over the last 8 years of new Doctor Who. And the problem with it is now, because of its, resolving the whole Time War thing and keeping the Time Lords alive that way, it's basically saying that the Doctor was sad for a bit, then he fought the children, and then everything was fine. I mean, that's how Stu Bagwell put it, and I'm quoting him because, it's a perfect summary of what it was, and it's making Doctor Who a bit too fairy tale a bit too safe, and Doctor Who has been far too safe for far too long. This kind of hammered that home. So the main plot point of the Time Lords being saved, in my opinion, doesn't work. So what else does this story have? That I could like. Well, it does have the Zygon story bit, but that's not resolved unless you watch another story, which I don't like it when that happens. So that's gone. So what's left? Well, the Doctors interact pretty well. Yeah, they do, and it's enjoyable, but it's better in other stories. So with all that, you can begin to see why it might be my least favourite of the multi-Doctor stories. I still like it. I don't think it's good, but it's enjoyable enough. It's got a lot of problems though, and to be honest, I might be able to enjoy it a little more if it wasn't as hideously overrated. But oh well, that's a whole can of worms, and I'm gonna try not to open it. Let's move on to the next one. So at the next spot, we have the Five Doctors. So when I was saying earlier about some of the multi-Doctor stories just being shameless vehicles for all the Doctors to meet, this was the story I'm talking about. I mean, well, when I say story, in terms of story, it doesn't really have much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's good. It's very enjoyable. But in terms of what it has as a story, it really isn't much. And like Day of the Doctor, I think it's quite overrated. Not as overrated as Day of the Doctor, mind, but still pretty darn overrated. I mean, it's very enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. Like, I enjoy seeing all the Doctors out together. I enjoy seeing the return of John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton's rivalry because they're my two favourite Doctors. Naturally, I enjoy seeing them squabble just because I'm weird like that. And it did have some good things. Like, I really liked adding some more Gallifreyan lore in there. That's always interesting seeing the rats and robots. Definitely one of the such an amazing villain, which gets quite overlooked. I'd love to see something else with the rats and robot, because it's a good concept and almost like a precursor to the Weeping Angels in a way. Apart from like it doesn't turn stone when you see it. Oh, it's just a bit like it, just a bit like it. And yeah, so while it doesn't have much on the side of being a story, it's enjoyable to watch and it's got some good stuff. And even the Daleks and the Cybermen are treated a bit badly, and even the Master to some extent. I mean, the way he gets defeated is just a bit embarrassing. It's got a good story, and even if there isn't too much of it, it's got a good ending. The Doctors interact well together, And for a 20th anniversary special, not that bad. It's a good summary of the last 20 years, and even though I don't think it's the best thing ever, it's the kind of story I'd show to somebody who hasn't really watched the classic series, because it's a good introduction to it all. Even if that isn't what it was intended as, it works as that because it's pretty story light and introduces you to it all in a very friendly, easy way to follow. So at the next spot we have the two doctors. So we're kind of getting into the stories I quite like a lot now. This used to be my favourite, but it's I don't know. I've just rewatched the Three Doctors, like after watching the Two Doctors and comparing the two. I kind of like the Three Doctors more, just because there's a few things I don't quite like about the Two Doctors. The main fact is that it kind of forgets a bit of the lore, like almost as if they didn't have a continuity advisor, because a lot of it's wrong, like the fact that, the Doctor mentions Time Lords to Jamie, even though he doesn't know what they are in the War Games. The fact that the Doctor's acting, Patrick Troughton's acting as an emissary for the Time Lords, even though he was running away from, like, Hartnell to the end of Troughton. Yeah, it doesn't quite work in that respect, but still a thoroughly enjoyable script from Robert Holmes nonetheless, because it has Sontarans in. I mean, they're always enjoyable and they're quite good in this story. I mean, the only other story I think they're good in, other than the Time Warrior, which, they're better in the Time Warrior, but Stike's quite an intimidating Sontaran, and overall, even if they do get defeated quite easily, it wasn't Androgum Genius who kind of outwitted them, so fair enough. I like the Androgums, they're also a very good and interesting species, and I almost wish they'd make a return, because they're quite enjoyable to watch, and there's some funny moments and some dark moments with Shock Eye. It's pretty good. Patrick Troughton puts in a great performance, especially considering his age. Colin Baker, as usual, is fantastic, and it's just a generally well written story, and probably has the most story out of all the multi-doctor stories, at least the ones done for telly. I haven't heard many of the Big Finish ones, but I intend to, as some of them look alright. I mean, Sirens in Time was a bit crap, but that's a topic for another day. This is the spot that the Two Doctors comes at. So at the best spot we have the Three Doctors. This story is thoroughly enjoyable, mainly for the fact that the chemistry between the first three Doctors is absolutely brilliant. I mean, sure, Hartnell has a bit of a passive role, only really beating them into shape, but it's a pretty good role for him to play, because the constant bickering between Pertwee and Troughton is always a pleasure to watch. I mean, especially as they're my two favourite Doctors, and Hartnell's pretty high up in my list of favourite Doctors as well. And on top of it, it's just a pretty well written story, and introduces some more Gallifreyan lore, with like the Time Lords not being all powerful all the time, and also Omega, who's a great villain, a little overacted at times, but still really enjoyable to watch, and quite a complex villain in the way that sure, he's trying to destroy the universe, but you can kind of see why he might be a bit scorned, but then again, he is insane. So, there is a bit of a kind of emotional mix up there, and the Doctor does generally get impacted by the fact that he has to destroy him, and Omega does return in later stories, like Arc of Infinity, which is a bit crap, and I haven't heard the Big Finish Omega yet, but I've heard very good things about it, so I might have to go ahead and listen to that at some point. But oh well, The Three Doctors is a phenomenal story. The only flaw I could really pick with it is the fact that Brigadier just basically becomes a caricature in this story, and it's really, really annoying. Like, just take season 7 for example. The Brigadier is a character. Sure, they get on sometimes, sure they don't get on sometimes. He has some character to him, especially in Inferno, and almost is studied as a character in that story. Whereas in this, he's literally just being an arsehole about everything, being really difficult, not believing the Doctor, getting him to do things when like it's not convenient. It's just annoying. It's trying to be played for comedy, and it's not funny. But that's really my only major flaw with the story. I mean, it's nothing spectacular, but it's really enjoyable and works well as a 10th anniversary special, and is definitely the best of the multi-Doctor stories. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this best to worst, and comment down below if you'd want to see any more of the best to worsts, and what best to worst you think I should do, and I might consider doing them. And I'll see you back next time in another video.